So, hello and welcome to Manreet, Sodhi, Someshwar, one of my favorite authors. Thank you so much for joining me, Manreet. And we're here today, in a way, to talk about the Partition Trilogy, but also to relate the first of it to this sort of pop culture phenomenon that Heeramandi has become. Either you love it or you hate it, but everybody definitely has an opinion on it. And who better than you to really tell us what Heeramandi was really like? Because I think the amount of research you put into Lahore was amazing. In fact, all your books, but this trilogy in particular, and I love both Lahore, Hyderabad, Kashmir. But let's focus a little on Lahore today because of Heeramandi. First, of course, have you watched it? What did you think of it? And uh, how close is it to the actual Lahore of that time?
Okay, a lot of questions, Kaveri. First,
I
thank you
know.
for having me, and thank you for your kind words about the Partition Trilogy. And I know we had a conversation around Lahore, which is book one of the
Yes,
trilogy
right.
when it came out in
2021.
September 20.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yes, so yes, I have absolutely watched Heeramandi. As you said, it's sort of the trending OTT series of this time.
Yeah.
And I was at a friend's dinner the other day. We were doing a barbecue because it's like sort of late spring, early summer here in New
Yeah,
York.
I want to
And
clarify to our viewers that you're in New York. So it's
yes, yes,
trending
it's where, yeah. And we were all
everywhere.
talking about it and discussing and, what people like, didn't like. So, I mean, sorry, this is our cat.
Oh,
She has to sit down.
how lovely.
Yeah.
What is she called? She or
Her
he?
name is Nyx, Nyx. She's my
Okay.
daughter's cat,
Mm.
and also my assistant, I like to say. And she's named after the Greek goddess of night, which is Nyx.
Oh, right.
That's why.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's right. She's beautiful,
She is. She's
but
gorgeous, and
she doesn't believe in showing her face.
she will. During my Zoom calls, she's figured that when this thing happens, she has to come and sit. And now people know her. In fact, sometimes the journalist will say, "Can you make sure Nyx is there in the camera?"
How nice.
Yeah, so
Great.
going
So we were
back to
talking about, yeah,
Heeramandi and Lahore, I feel that Heeramandi, of course, is a typical Mr. Bansali, very larger than life. And I think there is an element of Disneyfication in the sense
yeah,
that you do not want to really have any close associations with reality or the world as we know it. So to that extent, I think people who are watching it go in with that expectation.
yeah,
My concern or my peeve as a person who has studied Lahore and written about Lahore is that there are so many historical inaccuracies, so many things which are just not right, which don't sit with Lahore of the time, pre-independent India that Mr. Bansali has sort of staged. And, I could just sort of dig out a laundry list, but the most sort of pertinent thing would be that Lahore at that time, they were not speaking Urdu or the version
yeah.
of Hindustani that is being spoken. I had a conversation with another friend and we were like, is this Awadhi? And she is from Awadh. And she was like, no, no, this is not Awadhi either. So I mean, people have been writing that it's very Lucknowy. I can't comment on that because I don't know about Lucknow. I'm sort of not have read about it that much, but it is certainly not Lahori. The language of Lahore at that time was Punjabi. Uh, for instance, I was watching the first episode, and there's a moment when I think Manisha Koirala is going out of the whatever her mansion, Kotha, and she says Allah Hafiz. And that grated me so much because it was always Khuda Hafiz. It
Right,
was General Zia in the 80s who, trying to sort of Islamize in a very
yeah,
Arabic fashion Pakistan, made it Allah Hafiz. So
right.
even something as small as a greeting, is anachronistic. And I
Mm.
wonder now what the intent is. Like, I'm sure if Mr. Basari wanted to be historically accurate, it's not difficult to run it by people who know Punjab, Lahore, Heeramandi of that time. If, however, the intent is ki that doesn't matter. We're just drawing inspiration from it. Well, then that's his choice. But I think as people who are Punjabis, people who are vested in that culture, then why not change the name? Why call it Heeramandi, right?
Right.
So because when you're calling it Heeramandi, and I'm not even sort of a Pakistani, if you go on Pakistani Twitter, there is a whole thread of
Oh,
people
yes.
terribly at the least annoyed with this. I mean, my daughter is that age where she says this is cultural appropriation, ma, like,
Right.
and I won't go down into those waters, because I feel as an artist one should be able to talk about anything, portray
Right.
anything.
Right.
But then I think on the artist also comes the responsibility to portray it as accurately as you can and with as much sort of good intention. Now, I'm sure Mr. Bansali has a lot of good intention, but it's not translating on screen.
Right. Yeah, Manjeet, I felt the focus was really on the courtesan culture, and the idea that they were not just women of the night, so to speak, but a lot of them ended up in the arts. For instance, Saima is shown as someone who goes to Calcutta and becomes a singing star. And a lot of these women went to Bombay, and either their children became stars or they became producers. So there was that element and the association with the freedom struggle. I want to ask you first about the association with the freedom struggle. And then I want to ask you about the other lives that some of these women made, for themselves. Tell me about the association with the freedom struggle. How accurate is that?
Okay, so as you're saying rightly, there are so many things that the series,
Yeah,
I think,
exactly.
touches.
Yeah,
Its major emphasis, obviously, is on sort of the rivalry between these two courtesans portrayed
yeah.
by Manisha Koirala and Sonakshi Sinha, and obviously great acting. And
Yeah,
do the women look beautiful? Can we take a moment
of
out?
course.
Yeah, and so absolutely the gorgeous clothes they are wearing, the jewelry.
Yeah,
So yes, tick, 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 entirely
yeah,
solid Bansali territory. But again, as a person who is vested in the freedom struggle in partition, while there is a strong parallel thread of resistance which is being shown,
right.
of the Bibbo Jan portrayed by
Yeah,
beautifully by
Aditi
Aditi Rao
Ram, yeah,
Hydari, who is actually a rebel at heart and sort of is
yeah,
involved with it, but it still falls short. And I'll tell you how. One, who are these people? Who are these rebels? We know at that point in time, who the parties were. Okay, there was Congress, there was Muslim League, there was the local. But who are these people? And even if you don't want to give them these names, because then you sort of get into a historical terrain,
yeah,
at least give them some identity that we can latch on to say, okay, these were these rebels. Are they, for instance, disbanded soldiers? Because we know that
yeah,
soldiers who had come
yeah,
back from World War II still had
yeah.
their arms on them.
Arms,
And
exactly.
yes, and they
Which
were,
for me, when I read Lahore, was a major discovery. I
yeah,
had not thought in those terms before I read Lahore. And I
yeah,
realized that, these were sort of demobilized soldiers, which you said, and
yeah.
they had arms, and that's why they actually added to the fire.
Absolutely. And they were one of the first ones to actually take the route of violence, because they were like,
Exactly.
unlike, let's say, Nehru and Gandhi and non-violence, Ahimsa, they were like, we have fought wars, we
Yeah.
have our weapons on us, and we're going to
Right.
respond in this way.
Right.
So I think there was a great missed opportunity there. Like, who are these people? And,
Right.
and what are they? Taking the broad umbrella of Azadi is something like it's like an abridged children's tale when you do, right? Without getting into
Right.
the intricacies and the fine details of it. And
Right.
of course, there were, the courtesans played a huge role in terms of supporting the freedom movement.
Yeah.
It was both in terms of actively supporting them through finances, through giving money, which they show in the series through
They
Bibo
show.
Jan.
Yeah.
They also did that by giving them shelter. Many
Yes.
times, young men who were on the run from the police sought shelter there.
Yeah.
They also provided them intelligence to the extent that they could, which is shown in the
Which
series.
again is shown.
Is
Yeah.
shown. But my sort of peeve is that we could have built that thread better,
Yeah,
and okay, you may not want to go into details of how the Muslim League is asking for one thing and the Congress is one
yeah,
thing, but at least bring some of that actual flavor alive. And the reason why I'm returning to it is because we are living in times across the world,
yeah.
India, the US, which is where I live now, Europe, where history is being weaponized.
Right,
And history gets weaponized when we are very selective with how we are organizing the past and what we're telling about it,
right.
right? So I feel that when an artist, be a producer, director, actors, writers, step into a terrain which they say historical fiction, but then making history realistic is a responsibility that they do have. So, for instance,
Which you do,
they should do,
which
absolutely.
you do, which you do, and you
Yeah,
do very well.
thank you. I mean, that is absolutely my intent because I feel that that is one way people learn history, right?
Yeah.
That's how people form impressions. And then those impressions, play out in our daily life in terms of how we interact with each other, the impressions we have of other people around us. So I feel that was a missed opportunity. And I just want to point out, for instance, since we talk about Heeramandi in Lahore, in the courtesan quarter, at that point in the 40s, there was a very active bill which the Punjab Legislative Assembly was trying to pass. And remember, all this legislative assembly, the people who are there are really the Nawabs. They were
Yeah.
feudal landlords who made it.
Right.
And so there was this active bill being passed which said that the courtesans will not be allowed to perform at the Muslim shrines. So for
Oh,
that, we have to understand, and even in Mr. Bhansali's Heeramandi, he shows very often the women say कि मैं दरगाह में जाके,
right, right, right.
गाती हूँ. Because the women, the courtesans, are very actively involved in the cultural life of dargahs. They used to perform
Dargah.
there. They're
Perform.
performing in
Oh,
praise of God. They used to sing, they used to dance. And a lot of Muslim Sufi shrines, especially, where God is the beloved, and a lot of Sufi music is performed, was done by the courtesans. So
right.
this new purity that was being forced into the public, uh, that was a parallel struggle which the courtesans were having, and
All
I
right.
and I think that is again a missed opportunity because if that could have been touched upon, that would have shown us two things: how the courtesans have an actual struggle in the larger world outside, not just in their kothas, but outside, and also how the British have very successfully managed to portray the courtesans as women to be looked down upon. So
Yeah.
because there are these men who are engaging with them, which is certainly the Nawabs and even to some extent the British officials, and the Mem Sabs actually used to go and listen to these women as well because they were so in awe of the courtesan
Yeah.
style. But all that has been sort of not brought into the narrative because we need to see how the courtesans are struggling in the real world and how the British policy of, oh, these women are dirty has even got this bill in the Legislative Assembly where they're trying to actually break this very sort of, pact which the courtesans have with the shrines. So
Right.
because we keep going to the dargah over and over, but we don't
Yeah,
see
yeah.
what the connect is for
What
these
are they
women with the
doing there?
dargah. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. In fact, I like the use of Sakal Ban, which is, of course, Amir Khusro's ballad.
Absolutely.
And that is in praise of, it talks about Nizamuddin Aulia and it talks about Basant and all that. But again, you don't see why has he used it?
Yeah. So because
You know?
Sakalban actually, if they had shown a courtesan, courtesans did not really perform in a group. That's the other thing,
Right,
which, when you
right.
know that culture, it was one
One,
courtesan performing at a time. So if
right,
if he had, for instance, shown us whoever, Manish, one of them performing in a shrine, then the
right,
whole picture would have come together brilliantly. Because as
right.
you picked, it's a song which is sung at the Sufi shrine.
That's a shrine in praise of Nizamuddin Aulia.
Exactly, and written by Amir Khusro from 13th
Yeah,
century onwards. It also
exactly.
shows how history is
Shows you
never.
the long tradition.
Exactly. And that long tradition, he could have shown through a single dance situated in the shrine.
Manjeet, this brings me quickly to the idea. I really think you should do like an interpretation of Heeramandi. I mean, seriously, as a longer series, because not just as a critique, but sort of as a sort of an episode by episode breakdown of really what could have been, and or just giving people the subtext. I
Yeah,
think it'll be a great service. Seriously, you
no,
should
I could do
seriously
it,
consider it.
Kaveri. It's just that I'm sorry to say this, but it is endless. And I don't mean to, I don't mean to nitpick. That's what I'm saying. For
No,
me,
but you're not nitpicking. You're actually giving us a subtext. You're telling us,
yeah,
look, this is being used, but this is why it's being used,
yeah,
right?
and yeah, no, I totally agree. And in
So
fact,
you're not. So you're showing us the missing link.
yeah, I would love to do that. And also, for instance, like one of my friends the other day was saying at that dinner that, look, it's Bansali. He's going to show things in
Yeah,
a certain way. And I said, yes, yes, I totally agree. So even if we, let's say, focus on just the Tawayafs,
yeah,
it's the courtesans, it's the courtesan quarter, and nothing outside. But hey, even the courtesans spend a lot of time burnishing their art from a very young age. They were
yeah. Riyaz.
training
Yeah,
not
yeah,
only to dance, they were
yeah.
women who were well read at a time
Right,
when women were largely illiterate. A
right.
lot of the reason why these Nawabs went to visit kotas, of course,
Yeah,
besides the entertainment, was because they could have a conversation which was beyond the chula chowki conversations, right? Because these
exactly.
women were well read. So, and of course, some of them wrote poetry, which they show
Yeah,
us through, that Alamza,
Alamzeb.
I
Yeah,
think,
yeah,
yeah,
Alamzeb. Yeah,
Alamze. But I think there is an ustad who is shown,
yeah.
but an ustad is
But
supposed to be,
he's only gossiping.
yeah, he's supposed to be training them. When do we
Yeah,
even get one single snapshot of that?
yeah,
Right? So I think, I mean, despite Mr. Bansali's best intentions, it is a disservice to the courtesans. Because
right.
being a courtesan, especially, Tawar of a very high order, required a lot of work. It's like doing a PhD that we do nowadays.
Yeah,
These women were seriously women to be reckoned with. Um,
right.
so, as I said, I can go on and on.
What about the sort of entry of these women into the arts as we now know them, into the more established arts, cinema, poetry, music,
Yeah,
the kind of industrialized arts as we know them now,
yeah.
post-independence. Talk a little about that, Manri.
Yeah, there is, as you said, you mentioned one, which is, the girl who goes away.
Yeah.
Saima, I think her name is,
Saima, yeah,
who goes
and
to
becomes
Calcutta.
a singing star in
Yes.
Calcutta. And
And
there's a
then,
brief mention of, I think, Qudsiya Begum talking about K.L. Saigal. And,
yes,
it's the same time, right?
time.
When
Yes.
when music was taking off in Calcutta and new theaters and the
Yeah.
gramophone record,
Yeah.
it was becoming a thing.
Absolutely. And in fact, there is again a missed opportunity because there is a very small interaction between Sonakshi's character and Manisha, where Sonakshi is talking about how, she's going to play this recording, and then
Right,
I
right.
think she says, which was also a superstition at the time, that if you get your
Yeah,
voice recorded,
recorded.
then you could, some calamity would fall and you would
Yeah,
lose it forever. But the fact is, if I'm remembering correctly, it was Rasulan Bai and Jaddan Bai who actually
yeah,
took the, that first step, who figured that
yes,
I can get my song recorded, and then it's another income stream. And then
yeah,
recorded once means it can be played infinite number of times over without me having to
exactly,
sing that many times over.
exactly.
So, which again brings us to the fact that these women were actually entrepreneurial, and they were also very savvy women in terms of
Right.
finances and financial housekeeping, because
Yeah.
they see, if men ran households at that time, the only other women who were in charge of households were the courtesans.
Were the courtesans, yeah,
Yeah, it was a matriarchal structure. I
yeah,
mean, if a boy was unfortunately born in those households, he either became, the security guard type, or an errand boy, or
right,
when
right,
one of the courtesans stepped out, he would be walking as a guard boy or an errand boy.
yeah.
The women
Or
who,
the Nawab's family sort of adopted him,
right,
like there is in this case, the
right,
Manisha's son,
Yeah,
sort of
which
is
was
given
very
away to the
rare.
Nawab.
Which was, I guess, if they don't have a boy and they want a boy,
Yeah,
yeah. But
which
it's all very
happened, I
hush
think.
hush.
Yeah,
Yeah,
but
yeah,
hush, hush.
very hush hush. Yeah.
So a lot of this was happening at the same time, you know. What about the relationship of these women with the British? How accurate is that? I was a bit confused about that.
I think it's hugely exaggerated in what we say the true Bollywood style.
Mhm.
I mean, I think certainly the British, there were some officers who visited what they call the Notch
The
girls.
court. Right,
They were also introduced to them by the Nawabs. So there were
right,
many parties, occasions where the Nawabs hosted the Notch girls and, they
mhm,
performed for in front of the British officers as well.
right,
As I said earlier, the Mem Saabs, in fact, were very intrigued by these women because a lot of
right,
other women were parda clad, or even
right.
Hindu women wore a veil when they stepped out of the house, sari ka pallu.
Yeah,
Whereas these women were sort of, at least to the Mem Saab, women who performed, who showed their face publicly. So, and obviously their sartorial style, their jewelry, this was something which was remarked upon. And Mem Saabs also were entertained in the courtesan quarters. They watched these
right,
mehfils. So, which is
right.
again, I feel a missed opportunity because you're not showing it as it was. And we're not even talking about the fact that Lahore at that time, or as we call it, Lahore, was a syncretic society.
Yeah.
So we see courtesans were all Muslim. We see the Nawabs were all
Nawabs are
Muslim.
all Muslim.
Where are the Hindus and Sikhs?
Right,
They were both on the performing side. They were also on the patronage side. I
right.
mean, the Maharaja of Patiala was known,
Yeah,
and so on, Maharaja of Bahawalpur, they would come to Heeramandi because Heeramandi was the famed quarter of courtesans, and the
right.
Maharaja of Patiala was certainly a Sikh.
Yeah,
In fact, Heeramandi derives its name from Heera Singh Dogra, who was
right, right,
Maharaja Ranjit Singh's Wazir's son.
right.
And I think here really feel there is a huge missed opportunity because to show Lahore as a syncretic city it was, syncretic in the public, therefore the patrons who are coming, syncretic in the tawayafs, in the courtesan quarter, which is a huge problem that the British were facing. Obviously, partition finally happened because the wedge of divide and rule of making Muslims feel that you're Muslim and a Hindu feel you're a Hindu,
Right.
that you're a Sikh. But it was a very syncretic culture. And I think that is a hugely missed opportunity. That and the fact that the people spoke in Punjabi. I mean,
Yeah,
I don't know how these things would have panned commercially, but ideally the language should have been Punjabi, and then you do a subtitling or whatever you need to do.
right.
These women are not speaking this Sohrab Modi kind of.
Yeah. I wonder when you were doing your research, Manreet, how much of Heeramandi was part of what was happening? How much came up in your research to show Heeramandi's sort of involvement in the ferment of, Lahore at that time?
Yeah. No, it came up quite frequently. In fact, as I said, so Heeramandi was such an integral part of Lahore, but we also have to be aware that, like my book, Lahore, is set from the time Dickie Mountbatten arrives in India
Right.
to a month after independence and partition. So really
It
February of
was a very
1947.
short but very sort of intense period.
Right. But by February 1947, Heeramandi is not the Heeramandi of 1942 or 43. It has fallen into this state where the Nawabs have now clearly realized that they're going to lose all the British their colonial overlords. That patronage is going to be withdrawn. And these women have participated by, as I said, through intelligence, sharing of intelligence, through financial support, through hiding. But Heeramandi's glory days are largely in
Over.
in the waning now. So
Right,
so
right.
when I was writing, I actively contemplated at a point having a character situated in Heeramandi who would be a
Yeah.
courtesan.
I was
But then,
wondering, yeah,
yeah, but then, for other reasons, because there are so many multiple threads that I'm juggling
yeah.
in that, I decided to do away with it. But maybe I should write a Heeramandi set novel now, I think.
You should. But what made you give up that idea? Was it, as you were saying, just too many strands, or was it that Heeramandi itself would require a whole lot of other sort of, explanations and,
Um,
a setting by itself, perhaps?
It would require a setting by itself. That was certainly a consideration because in Lahore, I wanted to focus on the soldiers who have returned from World War II. So one
Yeah.
of my
So you
main
had
characters is a sepoy who
yes,
returns,
the
and there is
Sepoy and
yeah,
Tara
so
and the
and there is a
Sepoy. Yeah.
cross-religious love affair. One is a
Yeah.
Muslim, the other is a Hindu. And I was actually thinking if I put Malik, his beloved is a courtesan, and then because the British
Yeah,
were
that would have been
clamping down on
interesting.
them. But as you said, that would have required setting up a certain um, landscape, a terrain to explain to the reader. Because, while I'm writing about a historical time, I'm still speaking to a reader of today, which means there is a
Yeah.
lot that I have to bring them up to date with. And unfortunately, the times we live in, tawayafs have been just reduced to singing, dancing, nautch
Yeah,
girls,
yeah,
dance girls.
yeah,
Uh, and I do want to here say that it is huge credit to Mr. Bansali that at least he's trying to educate people that this is
yeah,
not what the wives were. So that is full
right.
marks to him there, and I want to register that. But
Yeah.
for me, as I said, there were practical considerations in terms of a reader reading, I will say the wife you'll immediately think is a call girl, is a dancing girl.
Uh,
And the space
right,
and time required to set that up was not something I could do in that book because I already have a Delhi thread where there is Jawaharlal
right.
Nehru, Vallabhbhai Patel.
Or Vallabhbhai Patel, and there are the women there. There's Maniben, there's
Yeah,
Indu, there are
Hindu, and
lots of
there's Edwina.
powerful women there as well.
Yeah, yeah. So it was, as I said, it was a choice I made. But hopefully somebody will write that novel.
It may just be you. You never know.
Inshallah.
Revisiting this. What are you working on now, Manri?
Okay, so I'm ideating. I'm thinking of writing something radically different. So let's see how it goes. But I have to say that the Partition Trilogy box set has come out, which is, all three
Yeah,
books as a,
yeah.
yeah. So we're doing some amount of, like I'm having a conversation with you, some Zoom calls, trying to make sure people are aware that these are three individual books and there is a box set and then they can go out and buy it. And also just taking a huge sigh of relief because it has been, uh,
Oh, a real
tremendous amount
labor
of
of
work for me.
love. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
I wonder if this translates into a series as well, your Partition Trilogy. I'm sure there must have been people who are interested.
Oh, I think it would translate wonderfully because whenever I do book readings, people tell me it is so cinematic. It is so,
Cinematic, exactly.
yeah, yeah. I think, well, I'm hoping somebody comes along because I feel that, I mean, I could not have a more authentic portrayal of that time,
Yeah,
1947. Having said that, we have to remember that any kind of historical fiction, mounting it on the screen requires very big budgets. And
yeah,
also, for me to agree, it would require for them to say, we want to stay authentic to the
yeah.
times, not do a Disneyfication of it. So we'll keep our fingers crossed.
Yeah, there's a new series that's coming out based on Dominique Lapierre and Larry Collins' Freedom at Midnight, which I think is coming out shortly, which also I'm looking forward to because that again is set in a very specific time and, of course, huge budgets, naturally.
Yeah, who's
Uh,
making
uh,
it?
that's Nikhil Advani, the person who
Okay.
made Rocket Boys, which was
Yeah,
also something I enjoyed hugely.
yeah, yeah.
I wonder if he should be talking to you. I
Yeah,
think it will
because you
be
know what?
great.
We all grew up on Dominic Lapierre and Larry Collins' Freedom at
Exactly. Freedom
Midnight.
at Midnight for us
Yeah.
was the Bible, no?
Was the
I mean,
Bible. Yeah,
yeah,
but I wrote the Partition Trilogy in answer to that because it is a
right.
white man's gaze.
Exactly.
It is a white
Exactly.
man's gaze, and everything is through that lens. So,
Yeah.
okay, even now, that book is on all footpaths in India, you will find it. But
Everywhere.
in time, people will see the Partition Trilogy and read it because in the Partition Trilogy, I'm giving voice back to us
Yeah.
Indians and saying this is our story and we will tell it our way. Well, I will certainly look out for it and then nitpick and do another session with you.
No, but we need to get the Partition Trilogy out in cinematic terms as well.
Yes, no,
I mean, what's the
Kaveri,
point of
that's
having so
your
many
domain. You
OTT
spread the good word.
platforms?
Yeah, no,
Yes.
spread the good word. Let people know.
But really, so much of sort of uh, erasure of history, partial telling of history is going on, that I think that's why it's very important for people like you to do what you do. I think otherwise it'll just be historians talking to each other. We need to have more popular historians, and a certain element of fiction, fine. I
Yeah,
think
and
Nix agrees.
yeah,
Nix is
she's
looking at
showing
me
you
with
her face
very,
now.
finally, I think she trusts me. Hello? Yes. I'm talking to your mom. So I think let's do something radical about that. And thank you so much, Manreet. As always, it's such a joy to talk to you. And we'll talk again soon
Absolutely.
when Freedom at Midnight comes out.
Yes,
And then
we
we'll
shall do
do,
that,
for
Kaveri.
sure, we'll do another session.
We'll do that. You take care.
Great.
Thank you so much for
Thank you.
inviting Nix
Thank
and
you.
me.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.